we need to behave, right?
Yeah. Hi, Ed.
We have, it's like we have 4 or 5 more people, Mary Beth or
Yes,
Carol.
people are just starting to show up.
Mhm.
So I did hear from Jean earlier today, and she was planning on being here, but her mother passed away. So if she doesn't pop in, I think it's safe to proceed without her.
Okay.
I don't see Shiara Mosier. I know Russ Kelly is not here today. Matt Fox, I see him. Gary List. So we do have 5 members at this time. 5 out of 9 creates, or 5 out of 7 creates a quorum. So I
Right.
would say we're safe to proceed.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead. They can join us as we go along. So I will call to order the Housing Element Committee at 3:02. And if everyone will follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
The flag,
the
United
United
States
States of America
And
and to the
to
the
republic
Republic,
which
for which
stands
stands one nation,
under
under
God,
God, with liberty.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if we can have an official roll call, Carol.
Okay, Chairman Jeff Duncan,
Here.
Vice Chair Greg Obranovich,
Here.
Matt Fox, Maureen Valley,
Here.
Russ Kelly's not here, Thomas Savage,
Here.
Gary Liss,
Here.
David Ring.
Here.
Kiara Mosier. And auxiliary Ed Horton.
Okay. All right, so at this time, we have a committee comment for items that are not on today's agenda. Are there any comments by the committee members?
Oh, I got a question. All the other committee meetings, are these recorded and available on Zoom or YouTube? And how do we look them up?
Yeah, if you go, they're all live streamed to YouTube. So Loomis CA or Loomis, California YouTube will get you there. I can post the link in our.
I mean, yeah, for the ones that, if I want to watch last week's meeting, in other words, not necessarily live, but the past meetings.
Yeah, all of the, other than the first week of meetings, now they're all being streamed through that YouTube channel. So if you wanted something from the first committee meetings,
Yeah.
which were the 17th and 18th.
Yeah.
Public Services, Facilities, Finance, Public Health, Safety and Noise, Horseshoe Bar, I-80, or Northwest I-80 Horseshoe Bar. I can put them on a flash drive for you. They were
Okay,
recorded. They were recorded via Zoom.
Okay, yeah. And all the other committee meetings going forward will also be recorded and available, circulation and everything else, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And
Good
I will
question.
post the link in the chat box, so keep an eye on the chat box.
Okay, thanks.
All right. That was a good question, Greg.
We'll start it out right, huh?
Yeah.
That'll
Are
make up
there
for all
any-
the other bad ones.
Are there any other comments or questions by the committee?
Just a question about the Hidden Grove, whether we'll be discussing that.
I don't think so. This is Housing Element Committee. All we have on Hidden Grove at this time is a pre-application submittal. So I don't think we have enough information to carry it forward unless Jenny wants to talk about that for how it works in with the housing element.
We do make mention of it in our presentation that we're going to give you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
I do have, go ahead, Maureen, you've been trying to get in there.
Okay, thanks. I was wondering if there was any consideration given to the Homewood property for mixed-use housing. Seems like a really cool urban type opportunity.
Yeah, and we received an application from Kniesel's Auto Body Repair. They're looking at moving into that location for their business.
Yeah, the only comment, I just thought I'd throw it out there, and I don't know what point we'll introduce this. It's just a question on that new project at the village site, I guess it's called Hidden Grove, is how that's going to affect our housing allocation. If we're able to, they've come forth and said it's all affordable, market rate housing, can we still, how will that affect? If
We're going to
our
get into that.
designations-
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments from committee that are not related to today's agenda? Okay. All right. Well, seeing none, we'll open it up for public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
And nobody's hand is raised.
Okay, very good. So we will need to adopt the agenda. So we'll need a motion to adopt today's agenda.
So moved.
Second,
All right. Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
who,
all.
who did the second?
Greg.
Okay,
All right.
okay, we will have our vote. Chairman Duncan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greg Obranovich,
Yes.
Maureen Valley,
You have to unmute Maureen.
Yes, sorry.
Thomas Savage,
Yes.
Gary Liss,
Yes.
David Ring.
Yes.
Okay, that's all of us.
Okay, so now we have, are there any public comments on the consent agenda at this time?
Seeing none.
Okay, so let's entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Looks like it's just the minutes from February and December 9th, 2020. Can I get a motion?
Also move first.
A second, Gary.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Jeff Duncan,
Yes,
Greg Obranovich,
Yes.
Maureen Valley,
Yes.
Thomas Savage,
Yes.
Greg Abranovich,
Yes.
Gary
You did.
List,
I
Yes.
voted twice.
and David Ring.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're down to the committee matters. So I guess we'll open up for Mary Beth or Jennifer to do the presentation.
Jenny, you want to take it away?
All right, let me get my presentation going here. Give me 1 second. And all right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to kick it off and then I'm going to pass it off to Cynthia to get into some details. We have lots and lots to cover today. So first being with what we kind of a recap of our February committee meeting, the outreach that we've done. We're going to talk about the land inventory, specifically the Hidden Grove pre-application and what that means to the housing element. And then the final programs that you saw in the draft housing element and the schedule for next steps, because as we all know, we're on a pretty tight deadline with the state right now. So moving this along. Here's the link to information that's been posted about the general plan. Everyone should have this information. Touching on the previous meeting. So going into this meeting, which we thought that we were in a potential shortfall, meaning that we did not have enough sites to meet the land inventory. And so we specifically talked about that there was a discrepancy between the zoning and the general plan designation on RH20, the site that we're using to meet the RENA. Then after the meeting, we had a follow-up conversation, and I'm sad to hear my condolences to Jean and her family on her mom's passing. Jean brought up, which we don't have, let's see, maybe it's on the next, okay. There was a particular ordinance, my apologies, it's not in here, I thought it was, that did make the zoning and the general plan designation whole for the housing element. So in fact, that village's site is available to meet the RENA. So going into the draft, that is what we put in the document, that site to meet the RENA. So there was, again, we talked about how there was enough land. Now, based on what we got the feedback from, that there was a ordinance, and we do have both ordinance numbers. I do not have them. We can, Lucy, maybe you can put that in the chat so that everyone is aware of what of those two ordinances are that made the zoning and general plan designation whole on those sites. The other thing we talked about was including an inclusionary housing program that had a little bit more strength. The previous inclusionary housing program said the town would consider it. The committee felt that it was important to say, no, we're going to do it. And so that's the program that you see in the draft housing element. Is it ordinance 254? There we go. Ordinance 254, approval of residential high density overlay general plan land use designation. So this is not actually, Jean found it, so it is there. To make that site actually available. As we talked about with the state, the zoning and the development standards have to be in place in order to count a site to meet the RENA. Subsequent to that, we also ran a housing survey for 2 weeks and received 208 complete surveys, which we thought was a great turnout. And I'll get more into the outreach on the next slide. And then we're going to talk about the Hidden Grove and the land inventory moving forward. Those were the topics. So just to recap for everyone, outreach. So back in November, we had workshops where the public was invited to attend. And that's one way that we get outreach for the housing element. Another way that we get outreach is we do consultations which are called interviews. And we do that with service providers who represent underserved, potentially underserved populations in the community as well as the region. You can see from this list, we spoke with Placer Community Foundation, Legal Services, Senior Life, Alta California Regional Center, Placer County Housing Authority, and Brilliant Corners. This information feeds into what the needs are of those populations. So that's another way that we get outreach. Then we get outreach through the community survey. So for the people who didn't attend the in-person workshops, we also give residents another opportunity to respond, which in addition to the people who attended that, we received 208 surveys with a lot of really great information in it that we're able to incorporate. And I'm going to give you a couple of slides on what some of the responses to the survey were. In addition to that, we will then go to the Planning Commission for review, as well as the Town Council for review before submitting to HCD. So there are plenty of opportunities for residents to get involved, as well as all the different ways that we do outreach. And this is all sufficient for the state in terms of getting input. And while this was just a focused housing survey, there will be subsequent surveys and that Mary Beth, the town, will be doing through Social Pinpoint. There will be surveys for other elements of the general plan. Interestingly enough, some of the responses to the surveys we got also included issues, wants, desires for other elements of the general plan. So I think this was a good start, a good warm up for residents, that there'll be more opportunities to come and get more outreach while we move the housing element forward. So one of the big things that we have to do in the housing element is talk about what housing conditions are and what the need is for replacement as well as rehab, and how old the community is and what the status of housing is. So housing existing conditions. So you can see here that we included information about home repair needs, and 34% said they needed some sort of minor repairs, and 9 needed major repairs. So this is really good information. Aside from someone driving around doing a condition survey, we were able to get this information. 91% of the respondents were homeowners. That's probably not a surprise, predominantly homeowner community. And then 73% of respondents identified that they work in Loomis. And I think you could probably assume that that has gone up significantly in the last year or so with COVID, the pandemic, and a lot of people having that option to be able to work from home. So this information we felt was valuable and good. As I talked about.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
Did you say that they 73% work in Loomis?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do not work in Loomis.
Okay.
Yes, do not work in Loomis. My apologies.
And so which did you mean?
Sorry. Do not work in Loomis.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Representing the fact that Loomis is a bedroom community. However, a lot of the comments in the narrative received were that people are working from home now while their residents, or while their job is not in Loomis, they do work from home. So we got that information as well. That's what I was referring to. So my apologies for the confusion. As I did mention, housing structure is another thing that is a big focus of the housing element, just identifying what the needs are so that the town can plan for how to help keep units in how to avoid health and safety codes, and there are programs out there that the town can apply for, having some of this information. So it's valid to get that. We talked about housing preferences, top barriers to providing housing. No surprise, cost of housing is obviously a big thing, 43%. Community opposition to new housing, 42%. And then cost of construction, 40%, which I actually saw something recently where a developer was building a house, and he showed about 3-4 years ago the cost of this wood that he was using to build the house, and the price of that and the cost of the wood today as opposed to the cost of the wood in 2017, I think it was, has gone up like 5-6 times the amount. So construction costs have gone up significantly. The top underserved populations are seniors, followed by lower income families, and then younger families. And the top barriers to obtaining housing is, again, no surprise, as you see in the needs assessment, the cost of housing in Loomis. It's a very, is high, and as well as rents are high, and there's not that many rent. The real estate market, not many options. That seems to be an issue across the whole Sacramento region, that as soon as a house hits the market, I'm sure all of you saw that story about the house, I believe, in Citrus Heights that had, you know, over 100 and something offers on it. It's a crazy market that we're in right now. And then followed up by lack of infrastructure. Best reasons to seek housing in Loomis is the small town rural atmosphere. We heard that a lot in the survey responses. There's a lot of community pride in the town, and that wants to be preserved, as well as the rural setting. We don't want to grow too big. We don't want to change what we have right now. And then the schools being the third top reason. So again, we have the notes, and we're compiling all of that information together, but we felt like this gave us a really good snapshot, and that it's a good starting place for you for future surveys. I think lastly, this is the just preference for future housing. We ask in the future what's missing, what more housing we want. People obviously 40% want to see more large lot single family homes. All right, I'm gonna go
Will
ahead.
we be getting these slides?
Yes, I think the presentation will be available. Yeah. So subsequent, go ahead, Mary Beth.
I'm sorry. The PowerPoint presentation, along with the agenda, the minutes, and everything else, is posted on our website under the committees, housing element committees tab.
Great.
I can post that link on the chat if you'd like it.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So the hot topic item, obviously, as of last week or 2 weeks ago at this point, after we had the draft housing element put together, was the pre-application for the Hidden Grove, the SB 330 application. The project does not include any affordable high density housing, which again, this is partially the site that we are meeting the intent of the RENA on high density 20 units an acre sites. So the housing element has been drafted, assuming that the village's site, we will count that towards meeting the high density RENA. Because there's a pre-application on it, we can talk about the fact that it's a pre-application. They do have a period of time before they have to submit an application. So the way the law looks at this in terms of a housing element, because we can't keep updating the housing element every other day, is that as of right now, that site is still available for high density housing. However, until there is entitlements pulled or, you know, an actual project approved on that site, then you cannot count that site. So, however, being proactive, and when Cynthia talks about the land inventory, and I think this actually bodes itself well for the timing, because we're moving forward because of our deadline with the housing element and the state. We have the village's site in there right now. As the land use committees are working through, they're going to work on identifying additional land at a higher density that could potentially accommodate more 20 units an acre housing after the housing element process. So that, because of the timing, that is not the way that this is going to work right now. So we do have a site that's viable. The state does feel that the site is still available because there is not an approved project on it. But being proactive, the town and the committees will continue to identify land to meet the RENA moving forward. And that's what this says here. Sorry, I moved ahead without actually moving the slide. So yes, they do have 180 days to submit an application. So this is a pre-application. We've already talked to the state about this to make sure that we're not trying to pull one over on anyone. We will identify this as a pre-application in the housing element and say that, you know, this could be a process. We will have a program in there. But again, because of timing, the land use committee will be working on additional land that will come back to the planning commission and council moving forward.
How about the village property itself? Even though there's a pre-application, will we be able to consider that as something that we'll be looking for them to comply with the current zoning for meeting RENA in this location?
That's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. So that will have to be discussed with the town when they actually do submit an application. That would be a negotiation with the town back and forth that they would need. There is an overlay, so it is not required to do the 20 units an acre. It is allowed. So the town would need to negotiate with that developer to try to get them to up their density but it is because it is not straight zoned land that says it's not an RD20 site that says you have to do this. What it is an overlay, unfortunately. So that does give you the flexibility to not do it at all, which, as we pointed out, this project does not include any high density in it, correct? Am I correct, Christy and Mary Beth? Okay, I want to make sure I'm not speaking out of tone there.
I believe that, this is Cynthia, I believe that 7 acres is required to be
Is it?
within the
Okay.
overlay zone.
7 acres has to be RD20?
Just somewhere within the village's area. It doesn't have to be on any specific, well, I think there's, let's see, is it site 10A and 10C? The 7 acres have to be in a configuration.
9 and 10.
Yeah.
But even though it's an overlay, so it's written into the zoning that it has to be in there.
Yeah, in the village's
Okay.
plan.
So at this point, they've submitted an application that does not include that. So, or a pre-application again. They haven't submitted an application. So maybe in discussions, that would be Mary Beth would call them and say, you forgot about this 20 units an acre that you got to do. And then maybe as they propose an application, it could turn into that. We don't all have a crystal ball, so I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but
at 20 units an acre for 7 acres, can we count 140 units there at this point for the housing element for going forward?
Right now, yes, we can. Once it becomes a project on the ground, then we have to look at the affordability of the units. And if the units are not affordable to that, are assumed lower income category, the town would have to identify additional sites within, the town to accommodate that. We're actually relying on 175 units for those 7 acres.
But if they're suggesting market rate for those 7 acres, if it's zoned at the 20 units per acre, they can put in 20 units per acre, but at market rates. Is that what you're communicating?
correct. There's not an affordability requirement. Yes, that's correct.
Can I ask a question then too, please?
Yep.
So I thought I recall that when the villages issue was being discussed a while ago, that the 20 acres or 20 units per acre, even if it wasn't built as affordable, even if it went as market rate, just the fact that it was 20 units per acre counted for something for our RETA numbers.
So that counts until it becomes a project. So we assume the density provides the affordability until it's an actual project where we can look at actual prices. Then we have to rely on that.
We have to wait until after it's been built. After it's been built or after it's been proposed, after it's been approved?
Proposed, usually when it's proposed.
When
you'll
it's
know.
approved, yeah, or when it's an approved project, then you know whether, well, you already know whether it's affordable or not. So it's either got some affordability components to it where they brought in a nonprofit or whatever. If they're approving it as is, then it is not an affordable project. And what happens is the town has to report to HCD on the RENA every year. And so you would say, this project is in this income category and it's not in the lower income category. And therefore you would have to identify, another site to meet your RENA. So
I've got one other real quick tangential question. It should be fast. So according to SB 330, they talk about preliminary applications. Is a pre-application actually a preliminary application? Are those two the same thing?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, and we're going to dive into land inventory, and Cynthia's going to tell you the plan in a minute. But first, she's going to run through the programs. Also, Mary Beth, I think maybe you sent out, and it is available on the website, is a track change version of the programs. So you can see where the changes were made. It is messy. It's hard to follow, but it's there. So now Cynthia's going to give the summary of why we did what we did. A method to the madness. Go ahead.
Yeah, there is a method, we promise. So the first step to the programs is that we look at, the accomplishments. So we want to determine the status of each program. Has it been completed? Should we make some modifications and continue it? We also look at addressing any new state law requirements. So you'd see programs included for that. We also try to condense programs where it makes sense. It makes the document a little bit more user-friendly if we are keeping specific topics within the same program, and it helps staff with reporting annually. If we don't have 35 programs, if they're more condensed and concise, that just helps everyone. So you can see here, program 1, there were no modifications. 4, no modifications. 7, we updated the list of available incentives to include streamlined processing, financial assistance. Program 8, this was removed, the funding sources were no longer available. Program 9, we strengthened the language for the committee motion regarding the inclusionary housing ordinance. Program 10, this was removed action to allow 20 units to the acre that was completed. Program 12, we expanded on strategies to encourage ADUs as we are relying on those a little bit to meet the lower income RENA, which we will talk about in a minute. Program 13, we expanded this from just including senior housing for all special needs groups. Program 14, there were no modifications. 15, we strengthened the language and removed consider. That is one of HCD's pet peeves, is they don't like the words consider, so we removed that. 16 and 17, there were no modifications there. 19, this is where we started to combine programs a little bit. 25 and 36, these were combined and updated to comply with new state law. Program 20, this was combined 26 and 27 from the previous housing element. 21, this was previously programs 30, 31, and 32, and then there were no modifications to program 22. Program 2, this was
These are new.
Oh, these are new. Program, sorry.
So new for state law.
2 is to address AB 686, which is fair housing assessment. Program 3, this was to address SB 35 and streamline processing. Program 5, this was included to address removing barriers for residential care facilities with 6 or fewer or 7 or more persons. And program 6, this is looking at removing constraints. Lucy, what is this one for? I forget which 1069 is. Oh, this is
5 and 6 have several elements to them depending on, it's a variety of state laws.
Okay, so it's just really looking at removing constraints. Yeah.
It was like height standards on multifamily, parking for emergency shelters, things like that.
Thank you.
And these are all in response to new state laws. So that's why, sorry to bore you with the snooze fest of all the code amendments we have to make.
On the special needs, do you have a list of the special needs here?
The special needs group specifically,
Right.
I'll,
Right, we had spoken to the need to address what are the special needs groups that are priorities for us. Are those now updated to reflect that?
we have not incorporated the results from the survey yet, so there may be additional modifications based off of the feedback there to the programs, but as of now, we have not incorporated those results.
These were, yeah, these are triggered by state laws that are code relate. So your zone, so these are programs that HCD wants to see that make amendments to your zoning code to allow for development for special needs types housing. So.
Right, it wasn't in the survey that the special needs were mentioned. I'm saying in our previous meetings of this committee, we talked about, we need to be clear about what are the special needs for Loomis. You highlighted from the survey, the seniors and other targets were coming out from the survey, but we addressed that previously. And my question is, have you addressed that you reference in the continued and modified programs, special needs, you're referencing it in the new program, special needs. Are those special needs the ones that we identified or something different?
No, they're seniors, they're low income families, they're persons with developmental as well as physical disabilities. They're a variety of special needs categories that have been discussed at this committee are reflected in these programs.
Great, thanks.
I know, am I muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay, I noted that one of the special needs listed was housing for farm workers, and it had different categories.
Right.
I don't think is that something that we're required to put in?
Yeah, it has to do with
unlikely?
employee housing. Yes, it's a requirement of the state. While
Okay.
we talk about that there's not a large farm worker population or farm worker housing population, it is a requirement that there is opportunities for employee housing who are in the farm industry. So.
Right. Okay, so
There are
even the
several.
thing that said like 30 up to 36, and I thought
It's not, it's a one size fits all, unfortunately, Jean. It's
Okay.
not very reflective of the town, but you wouldn't be building a, 36 unit bunkhouse for a farm that doesn't exist. So,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
you get the
'Cause
drift.
we don't have, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I understand then.
Yeah.
I did notice, well, I don't know. Go ahead with what you're doing and then I'll bring up.
We
some
have
questions.
one more slide of this and then the land inventory, and then we can open it up to your questions because I'm sure you'll have a few more. So last slide.
So this is also looking at addressing state law. So I'm going to skip 11 for a minute. Program 18, this is working with the Alta Regional Center for persons with developmental disabilities. This is creating a more proactive plan to work with them. Program 23, this is again AB 686. So originally the town did have a program to address fair housing, and this is now we've expanded on that to address the new requirements. And then program 11, this I'll talk about in a minute as well. This is pertaining to the sites inventory and ensuring that the town has sufficient capacity to meet the RENA and beyond. Because unfortunately, when you break even with your showing that you have zero surplus, zero shortfall, HCD does not like that. They want to see that you have actually more than the RENA. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But this program looks at increasing the allowable density in the town center commercial district from 15 units to the acre to 20 units to the acre. Okay, so we've kind of touched on a little bit, but I'll go back through this. So as all of you know, one of the biggest parts of the housing element is accommodating your regional housing need allocation and where you're going to do that. So for the analysis for Loomis, we are relying on 7 acres of high density land in the overlay district in the village plan. We are also looking at, that provides 175 unit capacity on those 7 acres. That's looking at The overlay allows from 20 to 25 units. So we took the 25, we took the upper end there. The lower would be the 140. We also projected out 24 ADUs based off of trends over the last few years.
That's accessory dwelling units, second
Accessory
units,
dwelling.
just to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Correct, yes, thank you. And then we relied on SACOG's ADU study to distribute the affordability of those 24 units. So their study gives you 56% to accommodate lower, 43% for moderate, and 1% for lower. So for above moderate, pardon me. So you can see how that was distributed amongst the income categories. So that actually puts us at 0 if we look at ADUs and 7. So we've broken even at that point. So to look at other options besides rezoning, we looked at the central commercial zone and the town central commercial land use designation. Both of those currently allow up to 15 units to the acre. So we are proposing to increase them to 20. That gives you this additional capacity to go towards your lower income RENA. So we did, because this would be a mixed use type of project, we are only assuming a 50% capacity on these sites, but that gives the town an additional 61 unit surplus. So you have a little bit of breathing room there. As we touched on a few minutes ago, if the Hidden Grove project did come about, we would lose those 7 acres unless there was an affordable component, which at this point I don't believe there is. So we would need to find an additional site or sites to accommodate the 175 units that we are assuming on that site. Again, like Jenny mentioned, this is pre-application, nothing has been approved. So as far as HCD is concerned, this is still just a piece of property that is available. Until it becomes an approved project, we can move forward with what it is currently on the ground. Does anyone have any questions there?
With the,
Yeah, this is,
go ahead.
okay, sorry. This is Tom. Just a question on the density upping for the commercial cores. Moving them up at 20 units an acre, and you're talking about mixed use, that's still only like a 2-story building, right?
Yeah, could be, yeah.
So if you really want, mixed use, typically you're looking at a 3 to 5-story building. So wouldn't you want to increase that density even higher? You really want it to work out in reality and not just on paper.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to twist my arm for more density, but
well, I mean, in downtowns where you'd want it,
definitely.
The last time we were talking about, apartments, maybe college housing, stuff like that. If you get those style of homes downtown, okay, there's something to eat, they're close to transit.
Sure.
We welcome your suggestions.
Yes.
For what you would like to see it increased.
Yeah, if I can jump in a little bit, at 20 units per acre, well, do you think that's going to meet the very low income category range? Because that's the highest density right now that we have.
Yeah.
And we discussed last time, as a result of the survey from different stakeholders, one of them said before it's really feasible to build, they need to go up to 30 units per acre. And I know that's not real popular. And I think the zoning right now, the ordinance at the village for that 7-acre lot said 20 to 25. So they gave it a range, which I don't quite understand why it has to have a range, but
it's a law. It's a state law because it was a rezone site. So so they made them put a minimum and a maximum, a range on it. That's why. It wasn't by choice. It was by requirement.
Okay, well, that's fine. But at 20 acre or 20 units an acre, I'm kind of questioning whether that's ever going to meet the very low income category for affordability. So those are just some comments.
Sure. And if you did increase it to 30, that would give you a slightly larger buffer as well, because obviously the unit count would go up there. And even assuming 50% on those sites, it still gets you more units there.
This is Tom. Got one more kind of thought on that.
Sure.
I guess I view like the Hidden Grove when you're talking about density, 20, 25, 30, those still being single family homes, not shared homes or anything like that. So you're really looking at the 0 lot lines where you can barely put a trash can next to, versus if you seem to go much higher with the densities and maybe make a floor instead of a ceiling, you'd get, more of the mixed use or apartment that you're looking for to actually, get the numbers and not just hit the arenas on paper, but actually have the density that should lead to more homes. So we're not trying to pack this into smaller lots, in 10 years from now. Or is that not understanding it correctly?
Oh, I agree.
That is correct. We're thinking along the same lines.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So the 50%, when you're talking about the 50% cover in the central commercial, does that mean it's 50% land cover, or does that mean 50% of the what's built has to be residential? Like, does it mean 50% has to be residential, 50% has to be commercial, or does it mean that the ground cover can only cover 50%? The buildings can only cover 50% of the ground.
We don't have any specific requirements. We're not writing any of those in. If the town wants to do that as part of the land use update, that definitely can be something that we do. We are just determining, we have to figure out capacity based off something. So we could assume 100% capacity, but because there is no residential requirement, HCD would kind of question that. So we just kind of assume a middle ground of, we assume 50% will develop. There are no actual requirements on
It's a conservative approach to showing that there is capacity, but but we also want the town to be able to approve a really great commercial project on something on one site that doesn't include residential, but then maybe next door gets a really great, affordable housing or mixed use project or something like that. So it gives you some more flexibility in terms of like how you approve things. It doesn't kind of back you into a corner to say like, oh, we have arena number and these, we can't do anything on this site because of that. Or if we approve this project that we really like, that doesn't include residential or includes not affordable residential, then, we're in a shortfall situation. So we want to set you up to be successful while the land use committee and all that is identifying potentially additional sites, because we know what's coming. I mean, that's the thing.
So the 50% is just a number that you're using to estimate how many units will be built based on how many units can be built.
Correct.
Okay. So then based on that, I have an issue with, I think putting a lot of housing downtown is not a terrible idea, but it's downtown. And so it's designed to be commercial. And so if you let people build really dense houses there, they're going to build really dense houses there because that's what they make their money off of. They don't make their money off of building a mixed use building. And so I think we need to, that's not up to us as the housing element committee, but I think as the town, we need to be very aware that that is our downtown area, that is where people are going to be going for commerce and to buy things, not to live. I think that's what it should be for.
Yeah, and there are ways to, require it to be mixed use. Whatever the configuration may be, it must be a mixed use product.
Okay.
And for the downtown, the previous studies have all underscored the need for more people to go to the businesses downtown. So I'm not sure where you're coming from, David, on saying, it sounds like you're saying we don't want people downtown when all the previous studies said the downtown businesses want people downtown. So
no, what I'm saying is downtown, we shouldn't be building. If we make it so that if we can build lots of housing downtown, people are going to rip up buildings that are used for commerce. And they're going to just put in houses, and I don't want that to happen. That is not. If you make it so that people are going to make money off of that, then they're going to do it. And so we need to make it so that we require them to keep the businesses downtown. That's what I'm saying.
And that's what I just heard Cynthia said. We can require mixed use.
Yep.
Can we also require maintaining existing commercial activity as part of the effort. Cynthia or others?
That would probably be something that the land use committee would determine. That makes it a little tricky. I mean, that's kind of limiting what the owner of the property is able to do with what they currently have. So I'm not sure about that one, but I see where you're getting. You don't want people to come in and just rip out what's currently there and replace it with a high dense product.
Yeah, that I totally get. And David, I think you're right on regarding that. So that's somewhat of the McMansion problems where they tear, there's a perfectly good home, but they tear it down to build a McMansion.
Yeah.
And that a lot of communities have had to deal with. So I agree with David on that point that we and I agree with Tom that having more density in the downtown is what we've always heard we want, and at least what the businesses want. The upper constraint on that is probably having not enough parking and too much traffic to add additional congestion. So that needs to be a referral to the transportation committee to address parking and traffic from higher levels of housing, mixed use downtown. So we need to make a referral officially from this committee to them saying, we're liking the idea of more density, but you got to tell us, can we handle that from a transportation element perspective?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I have a question as well regarding downtown, and we have this new element of environmental justice. And if we're planning on putting affordable housing downtown next to the railroad tracks, is there a conflict with that? Now, I know that the city of Roseville has new apartments right down by the railroad, and they've built other housing in the past that was more affordable. It's right next to the rail yard there. But there's problems with that, with pollution and things like that.
I think that's a CEQA issue, kind of, I think,
right?
In terms of allowing that, yeah.
And state law addresses that as well as the environmental justice now.
Right.
So if we're planning on putting affordable housing, do they not seem to have a problem with that? Now, if it's just market rate housing, people can buy and live wherever they want to. We see it all the time, $1 million homes right next to the freeways and stuff. But is there a problem with that? If we're trying to achieve what the state is saying that we should achieve by having affordable housing, and we're putting it next to railroad tracks, and then on the other hand, we don't want you to do that under the environmental justice clause. It seems to be contradictory.
Sure. I'm not an environmental justice expert, but I would say as long as you're not putting all of the housing there, that you're still dispersing it throughout the town. I know in terms of fair housing, as long as, we have some areas where it's a little more concentrated, but it's not all in one area of the town. We're still trying to disperse it throughout. So that would be my assumption. I mean, obviously, if that's the land you have available, it's what you have available. So.
Well, and David had raised the similar issue about building the highest density next to the Interstate 80. So it's the same type of issue. There is an EJ committee, isn't there, for our planning process here for the general plan?
Yes, I'll be giving that. I'll be helping on that meeting later in April. A couple of things just to point out is that Loomis is not an area where there is an environmental justice issue. Loomis practically can't score lower almost in some cases on their environmental justice issue ranking. You've got a lot of good things going on in Loomis where it's not quite so much an issue. But yes, having all of your affordable housing placed near the railroad track with no other types of housing near the railroad track could raise a few red flags. It's not something that you can't do. You can't say no affordable housing can be near the railroad track or the freeway. It's not a requirement to avoid that, as long as you're showing that you're not specifically targeting that income group. That's where it gets into a little trouble, where you only have high density housing, say, near those locations.
So as long as we don't upzone to, 4 and 5 story buildings downtown by the railroad tracks, then we should be okay. Environmental justice wise.
I think you'll be okay environmental justice wise regardless.
Okay.
Because there's
I know that that used to be an issue. People didn't like to live by railroad tracks, but I know we're in a housing crunch now, so it's different. So I was just kind of, it's just kind of funny to me that that's not an issue, but it's the law.
Yeah, this is Tom. That's funny to me too. I live where I can walk downtown. I love it. And, younger me, it'd be nice if you could, if you're living downtown, going to Sierra College, you could, walk to Loomis Basin or wherever. So you could be working there, working downtown, eating downtown, and a few miles from school. Like that'd be pretty good living. And there's, bus transit right there. I don't know. I guess I see that as kind of a positive, not a negative. And maybe it's if you're putting too many home or of the affordable housing in a blighted area. And I mean, it's a pretty clear argument that our downtown's not blighted. We're struggling by any means. It's kind of undergoing a revival. And I think that'll only continue. So I don't know. This is opinions.
Yeah, I would like to, so what we're proposing here is right now residential is allowed in these, so we're not looking at making that change. And right now you can do 15 units an acre. And I'd like to hear, Mary Beth, if you've had any applications for housing or have there been any proposals for housing downtown? And would you think that with a 5-unit increase that you're going to get inundated with applications at this point?
No applications. Some discussions about multi-use, 2-story commercial on the bottom, residential on the top, but the site itself is only 2 acres. So it's not, that would give it 10 more units. And yeah, I'm sure that would be penciled out better for the property owner as far as.
If you went to the 20 units an acre is what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. Okay, while we can open this up to bigger discussion, lastly is just a schedule, just to remind everyone where we've been, where we're at. We are planning on going to Planning Commission April 27th and Town Council in May 11th is the plan for them to review the draft housing elements prior to submitting to the state. And so with that, I will stop sharing my screen so we can continue our discussion.
I have a couple of hands raised. I have one panelist.
Great.
Hector.
Thank you, Mary Beth. This is Lorraine Thibault, and I'm Hector. And I did want to comment because I'm also in the Environmental Justice Committee.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I would like to sort of know enough to combine things. My concern is 2 things also with open space. Is I'm not so I'm concerned about the railroad tracks, but I'm very concerned about the proximity to the freeway and the known hazards of living close to the freeway and putting a large amount of low-income housing in there, which is especially dangerous for seniors and families with children. So that's one issue. The other is that the original proposal that you have is to have a lot of houses there butted up to each other, you have very little opportunity for open space, which is one of the mitigating factors for air pollution coming off the freeway, is the need for trees and green space. So those are my two concerns as to how these different committees are going to work on this project, or the whole issue of how we're going to get the RENA housing appropriately placed. So those are my comments. I know my husband wants to make a comment too. I don't know how Mary Beth wants to order your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have a call-in. Are we ready for public comment? I thought Hector was on the committee and it was Lorraine. So are we still in committee discussion?
My internet is going in and out. That's why I'm trying to listen on the phone every time it goes out. But one comment was about mixed use, and I thought that I had read someplace when I was going over new housing laws a while back that mixed use required 2/3 of it to be mixed use, not half, which means either you go 2 stories above 1 story of commercial, or you have to have a 2nd story housing and a big chunk, what, 1/3 or something, or half of the bottom floor. Do you know anything about that? Because you're talking about 50%, and I thought I read that it was now the definition required 2/3, or do we call it something else and not call it mixed use?
Mixed use with 2/3 residential is something that comes up in SB 330. So you, for certain purposes under state law, need that type of mixed use development, but that's not a requirement for all mixed use designations.
Okay, that's helpful.
Also, just to clarify, we're not talking about 50% of a project. We're talking about of all of the land that you have as commercial, or what's the designation? General
Central commercial.
Central commercial. We're saying that you have all these sites. We're saying that half of those sites could develop. We're going to count half of those sites towards this, to that there are opportunities for development at 20 units an acre. Does that make sense? So we're not talking about a half and half of a project. We're talking about you have 100 sites, and we're saying 50 of them have a potential. And this is part of our surplus of meeting our RENA, because we're meeting our RENA on the village site and ADUs, but we have to show we have there are more opportunities. And then, so that's, we're saying, assuming about 50 sites of the 100 could potentially accommodate a residential project.
So we have 100 vacant.
No, I'm sorry. You have 5. Sorry. I'm just saying, like, in general, we're not assuming all of them will develop.
So we have 5 sites.
So there's 5 sites with the central commercial and the tourist central commercial designation and zoning. Of those 5 sites, we are assuming, no, I lied, there's 4 sites. Of those 4 sites, we're assuming 2 would accommodate your lower income RENA, and 2 could accommodate above moderate. So only 2 of those, and of those 2, the total capacity is cut in half, just to allow for any non-residential and to just be very conservative with our capacity assumptions.
So you're counting not just central commercial, but also tourist commercial?
No, tourist commercial is the land use designation, and central commercial is the zoning. So I'm specifically talking about sites 54, 55, 56, and 57 in the inventory. Those are the 4 sites that have those zoning and designations.
We did a long time back, when I was on the planning commission, there was an apartment, smaller, like 14, 16 units approved, 2-story up on the further north on Taylor Road. It never got built. I think maybe the recession or something. And then there was a proposal for apartments next to Legacy Lane, and the neighbors turned out so awfully opposed that the developer just dropped the idea. But that area still, I think, isn't that still up? The northern part of Taylor Road is still zoned central commercial? not just the immediate downtown?
I would have to look at the map. I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
The northern part on Taylor is general commercial
Oh, general commercial. Okay, I see.
as far as zoning.
And reading through, I did read through the policy things last night, the new goals, programs, and policies. And I had a couple of comments on things that we already do have in place that I don't know if it helps us to mention that they're already in place. For instance, on ADUs, we charge for the second unit, we only charge a multifamily fee. We don't charge a full new, single family fee for all the fees that the town charges. Also, we do have clustered development in our zoning ordinance. It's primarily for preserving natural areas, natural resource areas, but we do have something in there. We did have one project that was approved and that fell through with the last fallout from the recession, unfortunately. But we do have something in there for cluster development. And we do already require the solar stub out for housing. That's mentioned in one of the ones about electricity somewhere in there. And we do have that requirement already. So do we get any, brownie points for having something already in place?
We'll confirm all those things are in there.
Yeah.
How do you come up with the numbers when you go through the policies, programs, things? How do you come up with the numbers of you hope it will yield X number of units?
It's called a WAG.
Stands for
a wild ass guess.
Oh, okay.
So you're not tied to it. It is a requirement of HCD. They want to see. So while we take a conservative approach, we do have to put in a number. Again, you're not held to it. They want to see what potentially it could yield. So that's where we get creative.
Okay.
On the numbers, there's been a lot of emphasis today on meeting the RENA and less emphasis than we talked about on previous committee calls about what are the needs of different groups. There was this one chart on 2 meetings ago that talked about the special needs, which is why I was asking about it earlier, that we really want to meet the needs of all these people, the young couples, the seniors, the downsizers, the professional assistants. You have this great list. And it would be great to confirm that list is still being used. I'd like to hear that that's the list that's being used for meeting our special needs. And that we're not just about meeting the RENA numbers, we're trying to figure out how do we meet the needs of those special needs for our community. And that's what the general plan should be about. The RENA should be a side benefit of doing that. But what we really need to focus the housing element on is meeting our special needs. What are we going to do to make sure that seniors and young couples aren't hit by the railroad or the highway like was just raised by Lorraine? How do we fashion the zoning ordinance to put in protections like have been discussed? You could do that, but I'm not hearing them being recommended. So when are we going to get to that between now and April 27th? I'm not hearing a clear articulation of that, which concerns me.
So a couple things. The land inventory in the housing element is a land use exercise to show availability. Us saying that these sites are available does not mean that they're going to develop. We are providing options for all income levels or all development types to get built. So there's the first thing. The way that we help incentivize meeting the needs of our special needs as well as all residents who want to live here in Loomis is through the programs, and then is subsequently through land use changes that could be made to do some of those things. The only thing that would be in the housing element is these land use changes type programs where we're saying, let's open up and increase density here in central commercial so that we can meet some of those missing middle housing types, as Thomas suggested, those college or new families. So we're setting forth, this is a framework required by the state. This document isn't going to get you housing built. So we want to get you this document so that you can move forward with good policies and programs to help incentivize housing for your special needs populations to get things done. We want to make it easier through this document of putting forth these zoning changes and these regulations that will then subsequently occur so that things can be easier to get done and get built in Loomis.
Is there a way of rather than emphasizing all these RENA numbers we have to meet, articulating what the needs are?
There's a whole document called the Housing Needs Assessment. Every page of that includes all your needs.
Including the special needs categories.
There's pages and pages of special needs documentation. We lay out the seniors, we lay out the homeless, we lay out the single parent households, we lay out all of that. So that's all in the housing element. And then fair housing. And then that all leads back into your programs. Your programs are there to address these needs.
Right, and so what I'm trying to get at is the programs you've articulated. You keep showing how it meets our RENA needs, but not how it meets these other needs. So for the summary,
there is lots of programs in there that meet the needs.
Right, but I'm not seeing how does this program result in 20 more units? How does this program result in 10 more units?
This program results in you showing that you have an inventory to meet your RENA and therefore get a compliant housing element so that you can actually do development. That's what our job is here.
I would like to ask Mary Beth or the mayor,
sure.
Is that
Go
their
right
job
ahead.
to meet the RENA needs, or is it to meet the special needs of our community? This is getting a little frustrating to me.
Well, if I can jump in and comment, I think it's a multifaceted solution. And the first part of the solution is provide land and housing inventory that step 2 can go ahead and move in and start to provide the next step. So there's a series of steps before the needs are actually met. And the housing element is only one, maybe the first step of meeting those needs.
Right. Okay. I have a comment or a question. Have we had any input from the affordable housing groups like Mercy Housing or some of the other groups that would say, hey, yeah, we're really interested in if you make the land available for affordable housing, say next to the or downtown in the downtown corridor, would they be interested in that? I think that's one of my frustrations is that, again, we talk about, upping the zoning in a place that they may not even be interested in going. So have we reached out to them and talked to them about that?
We have reached out to, I'm not sure which affordable housing developers, but we have, and they want land zoned in the 30 plus units an acre to make their projects pencil. So that's what we know of what affordable housing developers are looking for.
Okay. Well, yeah, it'd be nice to have that, the actual group that, whatever that group is, and maybe they could talk to us about it. Because that's what I think the frustration for everybody is we meet our RENA numbers and then nothing happens. But we have developers that just want to go to market value, just like on the property behind Rayleigh's, the overlay for the apartment buildings there. That was our affordable housing RENA numbers. And then it became market value. So I think that's why there's a lot of people that are frustrated with, we just keep on moving it around. And I don't have a problem with, students, living downtown. I mean, I think that's a great idea. But at the same time, maybe there's some other areas like Maureen had mentioned, the Homewood. I know that's right now, that's under application. Is that right, Mary Beth?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's too late. But there's got to be some other areas that we take into consideration. I think that's just, I think you're hearing frustration from, it's not just this committee necessarily. I know there's a lot of people that don't want affordable housing at all in this town, but, and you've seen from your survey, some of those issues. So, but also they get frustrated about, oh, we do this and then, oh, now we're going to upzone. So.
Is there anything stopping? So like if we have something zoned for, lower density residential, is there anything stopping a developer coming in and saying, I would like to build senior housing here. Your town says I can't do it there. Can you change your zoning so that I can do that?
You could do a general plan zoning amendment.
No. For the developers, they can come in and they can ask for anything they want, can't they?
If they go through the process and get it approved.
Right. So it seems like if we put out, instead of saying this is the type of, instead of saying that this is the density that we can use, that this is one way of doing it. I totally agree that saying that a higher density here works and you can come in and build here. This is what we're looking for. But can't we also just say, hey, we're looking for senior housing. We're open to people coming in and developing. We don't really have a good spot for it picked out yet, but if you can find one and come up with a good plan, then we will definitely consider it. And there should be a way for us to do that without saying, here is where we can put 20 units per house, here's where we can put 20 units per acre, and then hopefully you build senior housing there. I mean, is there anything we can do as a town besides just upzoning, their zoning things at higher density? It seems like that would more get to the point of what Gary's making, which is that this is what we want in our town. We want senior housing, we want student housing, we want affordable housing. Come to us with those projects and we will change our zoning and we will do it for you. We promise we'll do it for you, but we need to put it somewhere in writing that's what we're looking for, not that we're looking for just high density.
Well, David, this is Tom. I think that's what we're doing here is we're designating areas for these higher densities. So then the developer can say, I'm complying with your general plan by putting this here, and they don't have to make any sweet deals to us, upgrading paving that. They can just come in and say, I'm doing what you want. Here's a plan that does it, shows us the plan. There we go.
I get that, but my fear is that they can also come in and say, I'm doing what you said you wanted, which is putting in 10 apartments, which is per acre, which is what you say you want, but really I'm going to do it at market rate and it has nothing to do with what you really are looking for, which is senior housing, and we're going to just sell it to whoever wants it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that would go back to the inclusionary ordinance, wouldn't it? Where it's a requirement that was discussed early in the red line.
But we don't have that yet, and we're going to have these. I totally agree, but we're going to have the zoning before the inclusionary ordinance based on what the goals it looks like is. And so I think that my worry is that people are just going to come in and build it, whatever they're allowed to build and not what we want them to build.
To be clear, it's a program to increase the density, and that would then be vetted through your planning commission and council. Yes. So, I mean, we're not making any changes. The housing element does not make those changes. We have to put in a program to do that. That would happen after.
Can we add a program that says we're really, really willing to add a lot of senior housing and student housing and affordable housing for the right developer, but we're not going to change the density unless you come forward with a good project.
Not unless you don't want a certified housing element. Fortunately,
Not
the
related.
law is that you.
Not unless I
and
don't
we
want
have
it certified. Oh, I see
we
what you're saying.
have to
Okay.
provide. We have to provide. Unfortunately, the document is very, you know, is very regimented in what we have to put in it, and what we have to put in it is development certainty. We can only use sites that currently allow for certain things, and so what we're saying here is this is a halfway point. Central Commercial does allow residential, but the program would be to increase it to 20 units an acre to get you there. So we're not even there yet with this program. We don't even, that's just what we're trying. You can have a program that says, we'll do whatever, you know, we'll build senior housing, we'll build all these types of housing. There's a difference. There's a disconnect here. You can put in as many of these programs as you want. The difference is we have to show what is development ready, to show what is on the ground to meet your RENA. So they don't buy, oh, we'll do whatever they want, because
Right.
as Mary Beth said, if someone wants to come in and build, it's a general plan amendment that costs a lot of money. That's a process. However, through the land use element, some of these changes could easily be made. That these are your wishes and desires. So we take these programs, pass them off to Mark and Lucy and say, these are the things that we heard in the housing element. So as they're going through the land use map, here is what we heard we want. Let's do this. So you have an opportunity to make the land use changes that you want to see through that process.
So we have to decide what we want to recommend to the land use in these specific properties, i.e., are we going to actually take the step and recommend that we go to 30 units an acre? That's a big step. And that has to really be if that's what we want to do or not.
Right. So there could be a program now. We could suggest a program to say the 15 goes to 20 if they meet certain requirements, and if they meet additional targets for seniors, affordability, students, then they could go to 30 dwelling units per acre. And you said earlier that the 30 dwelling units is what the people building affordable housing are looking for. So we need to have something that makes the connection that they only get the higher density if they're doing what we want them to do. That's the program. And in addition to that program in the housing element, we need to ask the land use folks to make those adjustments coming out of this committee discussion. So those are two action items that I'm hearing general consensus about from this group. Am I right about that?
That sounds exactly what I'm looking for. Like,
right.
keep it roughly what it is now, but be willing to totally change it if they're willing to put in what we're looking for. But the question is does what we have now meet the minimum that we have to have for the RENA numbers because it all really comes back to it sucks that that's what it comes down to, but that's what it comes down to. Are we meeting the RENA numbers currently?
And we appreciate your professional work to meet the RENA numbers. So that enables us to have the luxury to go beyond that. So I hope you're not taking our constructive criticism of the focus because you've laid it out in a way HCD will handle it. We're now adding on top of that, we really want to do the right stuff for our community.
I fully hear you.
We have
an
opportunity here to add programs in this element that will help us get there. And we have the opportunity in the land use element to also articulate
to make those
same
increases
desires.
And
right.
those, to put those things into fruition. No, I debate this with you because I want you to, I appreciate that you all want to do the right thing, and I'm here to help you. I'm also have to play devil's advocate and not set you up to fail. And so
Right.
I want to get this certified without putting in a program that says, oh, wah, you're going to rezone and all that stuff. I want to make this easier process for you, because if we have to say, if we take this to the state and they say, yeah, go pound sand, this isn't going to work, then we have to put in a program that requires you to put minimum densities, make housing by right. It backs you again into a corner that I'm trying to avoid you having to be in, so that you can do the good planning that you want to do and do right by your community. So
to Gary's point, we can incorporate what he was talking about into our plan.
yes, we can put in a program that if you can go, so Cynthia, 15 units an acre?
Are we assuming you can go to 20, any project, but if you want to go to 30, you have to meet certain parameters? Or is it if you
Has
want
to be affordable?
I'm suggesting to go to 20, we meet certain requirements, not by right, certain additional requirements along the lines of what we've just been discussing. And to go to 30, it's higher requirements. Affordability, in my mind, should probably be a minimum requirement to get a higher density. But I'm not a land use planner. I don't know, or housing planner. I don't know what the exact language is, but I hope you've heard from enough of us that
no, we get it.
What we're trying to do is really get affordable housing for seniors, students, young professionals, young couples, so they can stay or come back to the community after they've gone to college or whatever.
Mary Beth, did you want to say something?
Yeah, with all of this, is there somebody willing to make a motion and a second and have a committee vote?
I think our attorney has a comment.
Yeah, we do need to have this in a motion.
I have a separate comment as well, Mary Beth.
Go ahead, Andres.
And then we also have a public member wanting to speak. Oh, and yeah, let me open it up for Andreas. Andreas, go ahead.
Part of our desire to attract affordable housing and senior housing and being willing to go to a higher density for that kind of development is already taken care of by the state density bonus law. So even if we go to 20 units an acre here, affordable housing developers or senior affordable housing developers can come in and get higher density than that under this state law that gives them that extra density by right, where they meet certain criteria under that state law to provide that kind of special need housing. So we don't necessarily need to get overly complex and artistic in how we draft our language here to allow for that extra density.
And
there might already be enough latitude in the state density bonus law to allow for that higher density for that kind of development.
Reiterating that in a program is okay though, right? To say that this is what is what is desired.
Yes, that would be appropriate. I'm just saying there's already an avenue for developers to bring that kind of higher density where it's not necessarily zoned or designated that way in the general plan.
The only stipulation there would be the only way that HCD does not allow you to count density bonus. So if we wanted to take credit for any of these units towards your capacity, we would have to have the increased density in the code and not rely on the density bonus, which you don't need because we'd already, based off the 20, we still have a surplus of 61 units. So it would just add to that if you increase the density.
But it's the 175 that we're working against, and we're working against the real needs of the community. So.
Andreas kind of said two different things there, though, which was that the state allows a density bonus, which increases affordability. And then he kind of said, which takes care of your special needs. And that's two different things. Because
no, I'm not saying it takes care of your special needs. I'm saying it provides an opportunity for a developer who's looking for that higher density for a project to pencil to come in with an affordable project that is more dense than what the general plan and zoning allow.
Right. Are we allowed to specifically say we want senior housing? Like, can we say we want this to be available only for seniors? Okay, so that kind of thing that is a program. Sorry,
not only. I think
not only
we're not saying only,
but you can express that it's a desire to have that kind of
yeah.
development.
Or
Yeah,
you
so-
can go to 30 if you get to like, but if they wouldn't get to 30 with density bonus, right? Is that safe to say? I mean, if we said 20, well, if they wanted an
If you're at
additional
20 and they
density,
go for density bonus, can they get up to 30? I'd have to pull up the density bonus law again to see what the maximum
actually, I
density
feel like
bonus
maybe
is.
they could.
50%, I believe.
It's 50,
Yeah.
density bonus is up to 50% now. So,
So they actually could get all the way to 30 with the density bonus.
and that would be if it's affordable project. So this would be, again, putting in a program that this is the desire, this is, what you're focused on for this area is these income groups.
So we can't specifically say these are the special needs we're focused on. We really can just say these are the special needs need affordable housing, and affordable housing is what we're focused on. That's essentially what it comes down to.
You could have a program that promotes that type of project, and you could provide incentives or anything.
Right, incentives, and then it's the towns reaching out to developers to get them, kind of putting together a plan. These are our sites. This is what we want. We want a senior housing. We want this. We want this. Market these sites is the program to these income groups, developers who would target this type of development.
Okay, so we know this is possible. Is there anyone else that has any comment? That's on the committee?
I'd like to make a motion when it's
Wait
time.
a second, Gary. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that, but I just wanted to hear if there was anyone else that would like to make the comment on that, and then we'll get to a motion.
Jean, go ahead. Oh, she froze.
Jean's frozen, but I thought she was on the phone.
Yeah. Can you talk through your phone, Jean?
No, I can't hear her. Is there anyone else at this time before Jean unfreezes?
I have two public members.
I have a tangent, a question on something unreal, pseudo related. So we're going to move on. We're going to take care of this first, and then move on.
Wait, David, and let's hear from. Is Jean still frozen?
Jean just jumped off, and she'll be coming back in.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment?
Two public members.
Okay. Should we? Okay, no one else on the committee right now, and Jean's coming back, so I guess we could go to the public at this time.
Okay.
Is that okay, Andres?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the public. Public comment?
Yes. Bonnie London, you may unmute.
Hi, this is Bonnie. I'm wondering if there's a program to be able to capture any affordable housing that may already exist in the community. And when I say affordable housing, that they match the criteria that the state lays out in terms of, what the price is and the number of household members.
So we're planning for the next 8 years, starting in May. So we can't take credit for anything that is previously done. This is a projecting out period. So starting May is when the planning period starts. Is that correct? Yeah.
And so you're not able to capture anything that may already exist that was never reported before?
That's correct.
Thanks.
And one more.
But good question.
Lorraine, do you still have a question? If so, you may unmute and speak.
Hector has a question. I believe he's on the committee.
Sorry, I want to cover, but I think everybody will understand that. Okay. I like really the discussion, what you're putting out there. I can see it's a lot of intelligent people working on this very hard. And I do have an accent, just in case. You can ask me, can you please repeat what you're saying? And I will try. Okay, one of the concerns I have is that when you talk about 20 or 30 or 50 units, what size units? 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, because there are different needs. There are families that they have many bathrooms. So depending how many square feet per unit and how you divide single people or with a family of 3 or 4, or it's a whole different spectrum that had to be planned, because you have 25 units, let's say 25, it will take a minimum of four floors. You know, it will take a lot of room to have 25 units. How do I know that? I used to live in one of those. I used to live in the rich ones and the medium ones and the poor ones. I know the whole story. So how you combine people who live by themselves, they can rely on a neighborhood in case of an emergency. So you have a family of 3 or 4, they also can watch somebody live alone, and doesn't need to be disabled, doesn't need to have a special needs, but it's a community. That's one of the things we have to talk about. How many square feet, how you combine all of them, and what will be around those enormous, awful buildings, which you need some kind of landscaping, and something that people feel like they are living in a decent place and not just a block of European Russian style of roof, barrier. And that will ruin the entire environment of the entire Loomis and the area. That's one of my concerns. So there's a lot to talk about that. The other concern is, remember, they are going to build some Costco around here, just in Loomis. And that will bring thousands and thousands of cars a day. How we are going to go around? The other concern is the emergency preparedness. You know, we have families that went through the Paradise Inferno, and we have only 2 exits, basically, 2 main roads. In case of an emergency, how we work on that? Everybody will get stuck there. Downtown, non-town, in the hills, there's nowhere to go. And I don't know if there's a entrance or exit for special emergencies, you know, services and parking. I think that parking could be done separate, like 2, 3, 4 store parking, and the roof to be green to compensate for all the concrete we are throwing there. And then people will have to walk from their houses or apartment to the parking. Yes, but it's pretty normal, and they can have a better house, and cars could be outside, and they walk, what, a block, 2 blocks to get? That's pretty normal. Some people walk 10 blocks, half a mile to get to transportation. So I think we have to take a lot of these issues in consideration. And the other one, why don't we use the 2 acres? I think it's 2 acres they propose here for next to the freeway for commercial. We will not just bring all the commercial to downtown, make a beautiful commercial area with a lot of restaurants, and use 2 those acres for more housing. And
okay. All right. Thanks, Hector. I know the property you're talking about, Hector, and I think that is one of the properties that will be taken under consideration under the land use.
Yeah.
And I know exactly where you're talking about. So, but thanks again and you're right, there's a lot to take into consideration as far as the parking and traffic, but that'll be under I believe you're on the circulation committee, and we'll be talking about that there as well. Is there any more public comment, Mary Beth?
One more, Bonnie London.
Okay.
You may unmute.
Hi there. Sorry, I had another question, and that was with regards to the vacant sites. Is there a map to show those vacant sites? And I know that there was a sighting of 4 sites specifically, 54, 55, 56, 57, and where might we be able to view that?
We were waiting on feedback and final direction prior to making the map, but there will definitely be a map included.
Okay, and are those sites verified? And I only ask because in the land use committees, I've already observed one site that's incorrectly stated as vacant, and it was the entire Montserrat community, which is not vacant at all. Most of them have already been developed.
Our understanding is that they're vacant, but we can double check that to confirm.
Yeah, and they're not vacant. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, I'm interested in the map as well. Okay, so if there's no more public comment.
I have one, and I think it's Jean. She's calling in. I don't
Oh, yes.
idea.
Good. Very good.
But Jean, go ahead, unmute.
It's Jean. Is it my turn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm very sorry. My internet keeps going out, so I'm trying to do this. What I was trying to ask before, if we go to 30 units per acre, what is the height, and can our fire department, that's one, I have like 4 questions. Can our fire department accommodate that kind of thing? Do we know?
I don't have the answer to that, Jean. And yes, that would, if we put in this as a program to go to 30 for projects, then the details of what 30 looks like would have to be worked out in, the town would do a zoning change, and that would be a zoning code amendment. And they would say, what is 30? What does that mean? What does that look like in terms of height and those things?
Because if the fire department can't handle it, we shouldn't be building it, and they won't approve it either. Okay, so that needs to be checked into at some point anyway. I hate to put in something that we're not really going to be able to do. A couple of questions from reading through the policies and goals. One that you took out was the old A7 about low income fee for 5 and more units. Did we have one, and do we not have it anymore, and why is it taken out? Do we not have that now?
I will have to look back and confirm.
You're saying program 7?
The old, in the strikeout stuff, old A7.
Oh, we'll have to pull that up and look. We didn't arbitrarily take anything out. It might have been combined with another part. That's the hard about that's what's difficult about the track changes. You don't see where everything was moved together to make it more streamlined but we'll pull that up right now.
I just wondered if something had happened to it, or it was still being collected and shows up somewhere else. Okay, this is a general comment where it says on A16 that we would give reduced development standards, and I thought that sounds horribly open-ended. Like, I guess a lot of us felt burned because of the village when it got a PD, and they came in and basically ran roughshod over our development standards. And I don't think people want that again. So that sounds nice to say we'll give them reduced development standards, but I think that's going to be a concern. Maybe you have to say it, but
it's an option.
Pardon?
It's an option that would be kind of negotiated with Mary Beth, and like what made sense and what worked for, what makes their project pencil, I guess, is the way that you look at it.
Okay. And the other comment I had was another thing that we already do have in large measure and maybe meets what you wanted was for the mobile home conversion. We did an ordinance already several years back that basically discourages that kind of thing, and I think provided for conversion to owner sites, and probably had moving expenses or something like that. But you might check, because what we have may meet that item as well.
You're talking about the policies, Jean, yes?
I think there was a policy about developing some requirement on converting mobile home parks, and we do have a mobile home park.
Yeah, it's just saying the town shall discourage the conversion of.
Right, but we already have, I don't remember now if it said we needed to develop an ordinance or something like that. We do already have that in place. If that gives us any brownie points for having it in place already, you might look and see on that one. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jean.
Thanks, Jean.
Okay,
Okay.
Gary, I'm sorry, Mary Beth, is there anyone else?
No.
Okay, thanks. All right, Gary, are you prepared for this?
Working on it. I was just about to type it into chat, but the motion is to add a program to allow for density bonus to 20 dwelling units per acre, were discussed earlier. If affordable projects are targeted to special needs identified in the housing element, and to 30 dwelling units per acre if meet other concerns regarding parking and congestion. And that this discussion be referred to the land use element committee to consider the need for higher density to meet our housing needs, and to be referred to the circulation element committee to look at the upper limit that would be okay for still having adequate parking and acceptable levels of congestion, and to be referred to the fire department to ensure what can be the upper limit for the height of buildings. So I was just about to type all that into the chat.
Regards to the fire department, as the community grows, I think, isn't it the fire services kind of a responsibility obligation to meet the needs? In other words, they might have to float a bond to raise money for better equipment or assessments or whatever.
They may require the developer to pay into something that
Right.
would, for a ladder truck, for example.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know that the fire department can just say no.
Okay, we have a motion.
I think the
I have a
attorney,
question to
attorney
clarify.
has,
I wanted to get some clarification on the first part of the motion to make sure that we heard it correctly and that it captures what we were discussing earlier. Are you looking to propose putting in language to offer an additional density bonus for affordable projects, or are you, how exactly are you looking to incentivize the affordable and the senior projects? Because we can't impose anything that's less than what the state density bonus law already allows, but we're allowed to go above that. And so the way I heard the motion was we're allowing an extra density bonus.
No, Cynthia had highlighted that HCD doesn't allow you to count the density bonus towards the RENA numbers. This would be related to that. So it's not related to the density bonus reference that you highlighted. It's dealing with what Cynthia highlighted. HCD doesn't allow you to count density bonus. Would need the density bonus in the code, is the quote that I captured.
We'd need the higher density in the bonus. We wouldn't, we need the higher density in the code, not a density bonus in the code. And I think that's maybe a very fine distinction, but I think we need to be clear that what we're looking for to meet HCD's needs is a higher density that's allowed for a certain use, not that we will grant a density bonus over the allowed density for a certain use.
That's what I was trying to get at. Again, I'm not expert in all this language stuff that you're dealing with. So when I get it in the chat, we can deal with that, and I'll take out the fire department given what Jeff just said. So it would be to add the program to allow for a higher density rather than a density bonus to 20 dwelling units per acre, yada, yada, yada. So I would just change bonus to higher density instead of density bonus.
Perfect.
Yeah, that makes it much clearer.
And that makes sense to Cynthia and Jennifer as well?
Yeah. So we're going to 20 if they meet certain parameters and 30 if they meet even more.
Right, and we don't have it all worked out. Like the inclusionary ordinance discussion, we're trying to give you a sense of.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's definitely, that works.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So does everyone understand the motion?
Can we
you read
have a
through it one more
reread on
time?
the revised motion?
Yeah.
The revised motion is to add a program to allow for higher density to 20 dwelling units per acre if affordable projects targeted for the special needs, for example, seniors, students, families, and 30 dwelling units per acre if meet other concerns regarding parking and congestion. This issue would be referred to the Land Use Element Committee to consider the need for higher density to meet our housing needs, and referred to the Circulation Element Committee to look at the upper limit that would be okay for still having adequate parking and acceptable levels of congestion.
Can I ask a question about that now?
One second. Andreas, does that sound okay legally?
That sounds like an okay motion to me.
Okay.
We need a second.
I have a question about it before I can second it. It sounds great, except for one question. Can I ask it?
Go ahead, quick.
Okay. So does the state's bonus then go on top of that? So is it an extra 10% bonus above
Yes.
that? So if we say up to 30%,
Well, up to
30,
50%, depending on how much they make the project affordable.
if we say up to 30, then the state says up to 45, assuming that they're okay.
Yes.
Then I would like to second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call vote?
Okay, let's start with David Reen.
Aye.
Gary Liss.
Yes.
Thomas Savage.
Yes.
Green Valley.
Yes.
Gregor Brandovich.
Yes.
And Jeff Duncan.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You forgot Jean.
Well, she's not a voting member.
Oh, she's
No
on.
voting member.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But she's unforgettable.
Yeah. Very important member.
Very important member.
That's right.
We
Okay.
appreciate all her help.
Okay, so we have that down. Is there any more conversation by committee members?
I had one
Go ahead,
question.
Maureen.
Is there an appetite for, sorry about that. Is there an appetite for having an upscale mobile home park? You wouldn't have to build anything.
I think so.
It could be well done.
I moved from Sunnyvale where they had a number of those, and my partner's boss lived in one, so we had dinner there. I think it's another option. I don't know that that's what we're striving for, but for being an eligible activity, I would think that might work.
Okay.
How would that would just come into being an acceptable use in our, like, in a units,
land use.
Units per acre? Yeah. Okay.
Theoretically, if you had like this is something to consider when your guys are going to be doing your inclusionary housing ordinance. If there is a land set aside or a housing trust fund that people pay into of some sort, you could then, there's the land trusts where you could buy up land to do where it's like an ownership type, modular home type project that is affordable. So there are many ideas out there where that could be worked in for sure.
Thanks.
I had one other question that came up a long time ago that I think it was Cynthia that said there was the tourist commercial. You said there's something different between, you said there was nothing different between tourist commercial and central commercial. Is that? What is the,
No, it's just the 4 sites that we have in the inventory. Their zoning is the central commercial and their general plan land use designation is the tourist central commercial. So they're just 2 different. One's your
so I'm
general.
looking at the two, so all I'm seeing, so those are, they're, say that again. So the zoning is different than the general plan.
Your zoning designation is CC, which is central commercial, for sites 54 through 57. And then your general plan designation is TC, which is tourist central commercial.
But the general plan wins, right? Like, isn't the general plan
Yes,
go
the
over
general plan
everything? So
wins,
then,
correct.
so it's really this tourist commercial. So when you're talking about upping the density, then the only thing that I see on my map for tourist commercial is on the other side of I-80, on the south side of I-80. Is that right?
I will have to look to see where they are.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's what you're talking about, raising the housing, the units per acre for that. And that's, so when we're talking about central commercial, and I'm in my head, I'm thinking downtown, and
So
you're not
thinking
even
for
considering
the-
downtown. You're saying over there on the other side of I-80.
So are you looking at the zoning as the tourist destination commercial?
And all I'm looking at is a map that says CT on it, and it's what you, it's the Turtle Island properties.
CT, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sites. Those currently we are looking at moderate, but we just, if the TC or CT makes more sense than the central commercial because of the location, we can definitely modify that.
My opinion is, that the CC, I'm okay with putting a lot of houses there. The CT is really it was zoned to bring people here, not to build houses here. And so I would frown on, and my vote would be to not increase the housing there above what's already available, but to make it the CC part, which is the downtown part. I would be more willing to do that.
So
that was my intent as well.
okay, so the sites we have identified, are those correct or incorrect?
The
Correct.
CC is where we want, what the motion was about, not the tourist commercial.
Right.
The motion was about the CC area.
Central commercial. Yes.
Right, central commercial.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Yes, okay.
The only residential currently allowed in the tourist commercial is in a mixed use structure. There is no other residential allowed in that use currently.
And again, this is all my opinions, but I'm fine with that. But I was worried that the way
that
you
meets
said
the
it was
intent
that
of what
CC
you
and
want.
CT
Yeah.
were the same, and they're not. And in my head, CC and CT are 2 different things. Okay.
Yeah, they allow mixed use development.
Okay. Thank you.
It's currently not mixed use development in the sense of different kinds of projects within. It's currently, as written currently, it's in a mixed use structure. So not separate buildings with residential and separate buildings for commercial, but a mixed use structure that's the only residential currently allowed. We need to change that if you're going to.
And I believe Mary Beth did bring that up. And so if we did not include that language, I will add that in because we intended to include that. So I will specify any configuration of mixed use is appropriate.
I think that's not what we're saying.
That's
At
the
least that's
opposite.
not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that I don't think that any is appropriate. I'm saying it should only be in structures.
What we are, yes, well, it is how it is right now.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I feel okay, good. So
I have another question. If
Yeah, go
David's
ahead,
done.
Barry.
For SB 330, they make this arrogant statement about we're going to do what we want because the state gives us all this authority under SB 330, which is my interpretation of what they said. Can you give us any advice of is there and what they made clear is you can't do anything that's not already required. So can we put things in the housing element about what's required to avoid that type of thing happening in the future for other locations. We have to deal with this Hidden Grove project in the context of the existing general plan and zoning, I assume. We can't get them to comply with something that's coming down the pike in another year or two. But is there something that the housing element and the general plan in general could put in that would protect us?
Well, one of the everything, all of the objective standards that you put into the general plan and the housing element are going, once adopted, are going to be the ground rules for any development that comes in after.
Right. So from a housing perspective, one of the issues that came up on the village project that I'd like to address somewhere in the general plan, I don't know if it's the housing element, is the idea of the phased development, that no more than X number of houses or homes could be built at any one time over a 5-year period or something of that nature. With the village, there were about 300 homes, and there was a lot of concern about what the traffic impacts would be of that. They tried to allay the concerns of the community, but did not succeed. And one of the things I concluded from that was it was just too big a project all at once to happen without people seeing the results of the development. So anywhere else in town, the only other place where we had something like that was Sunrise Loomis, and that was before planning of the sort that we do today.
So for traffic impacts like that, that seems more like a CEQA traffic mitigation measure where that would be kind of the appropriate place to take up an issue like that. I'm not sure that there's a universal enough approach that we could take at this kind of 30,000 foot level of the general plan to really address that, because traffic impacts from construction is really kind of a very project specific issue. And so
it is and it isn't. We know that there'll be traffic impacts. And couldn't we say that one of the objective things is we don't want to grow leaps and we don't want to double in size overnight. We only want projects that are 100 units or less at any one time. Something of that nature is what I'm talking for the housing element, in order to try to deal with the need for not being overwhelmed by new projects that we don't see the results of and won't know until it's over, and then it's too late. So is there a way that we could say in the housing element, we only want no more than 100 units developed at any one time?
I'm not sure that we can, because that gets into an issue that somebody raised earlier, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, about kind of limiting what property owners can do with their land. And so if somebody's got a large parcel of land that can easily support that, and they come forward with a project and comply with all of the other objective standards, I'm not sure that we have the power to tell them, thou shall only build 100 units over the course of 5 years.
So if you're not sure, is that something that this committee could refer to staff to research and evaluate? Is there an objective standard that could limit the phasing to not overwhelm the town by having 300 units all at once in a community of our size? That is there any examples of objective standards that require a limit on how much can be done at once?
The way I've seen that is in growth control ordinances that are voted by the whole town. So, but that puts a huge red flag on your back. Advocates come after you. I mean, it's so by putting something in there, you are somewhat, in my experience, targeting yourself in a negative way. So yes.
I've never seen that be included in a general plan.
No, it's
How
not,
does,
I
um,
haven't seen it in a general plan.
That's usually negotiated with the developer. That's what went on with the village. And they went through a lot of, leaps and bounds for Boynton Road and the phasing. And a lot of the phasing was circulation to build the roads before they built the houses. So that was all kind of built in, but a lot of that is negotiated between the developers and the town. And that's like putting a restraint on building because you say you don't have enough water. So I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it that way.
So how does Tahoe do it where they have a limited amount of permits in the basin that they issue every year?
The Tahoe region has a whole bunch of special legislation that applies to it from the state level down. So we can't really look to anything in the Tahoe region to
They have
inform what we're allowed to
TRPA,
do.
yeah, totally different.
Yeah.
So can we do, two suggestions. One is, can we either say if there's really big developments over a certain number of houses that they are required to hire for the town, someone like PlaceWorks or something that will come in and negotiate for or with us so that we're not overwhelming Mary Beth all at once with this huge thing that maybe she's not ready for? Or can we say something like, we can limit the size of a single project to be 100 homes at a time, and we need to make sure that any project that's being built within a certain radius of that project also has to wait until the first project has been approved before they can submit an application for that, something like that.
Well, so the first part is we already kind of do that. We, on large projects where CEQA analysis comes into play, we already hire a team of experts to help Mary Beth evaluate that. It's not just her, it's like Christy comes in and we've got other experts that help with this as well. So it's not just Mary Beth that's doing this. And on the second piece, it sounds like you're trying to put something like a development moratorium in place through the general plan. And again, I don't know that that's really the appropriate place to do it.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get Gary's idea into a workable scenario, and you're saying you keep shooting me down.
Well,
so sorry. David, I know.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
We're after 5 o'clock. I would really encourage your comments on this topic in our comment form. It will get distributed. We can evaluate it, get you the correct answer instead of trying to have this discussion until midnight.
Well, and this isn't really just confined to a housing element issue anyway. So I think that this is a bigger issue, general plan, maybe circulation issue or CEQA, I think Andres mentioned before. But as far as the housing element, I think that we're at this point that we are. And like Mary Beth says, maybe we can get the comments sent in. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions, and maybe we can find out. My big question is, I'd like to see that site map, and because I'm a little slow, and sometimes I have to see something to visualize, and go out to the site and try to visualize, how high a building might be.
Apologies, we should have brought that with us. So yes, duly noted.
Okay, so I think we covered a lot of ground, which is good. I mean, we were playing catch up. I know that. So hopefully it.
Before you adjourn, is this our last housing committee meeting then? Because you were talking about going to the planning commission in April.
Well, I thought we were going to have another one before the planning commission. Is that right? April 14th? Or is that the planning commission?
No.
No?
I have a placeholder on the 14th if we needed it, if we come up with new information or whatever, but at this point, I think we're done. Placeholder will wrap this all up, and your next opportunity would be during the public hearing and at the planning commission level.
And the planning commission would be what date?
April
27th.
April 27th.
Yes.
So at that point, hopefully prior to that point, we'll have not only the maps, but maybe some information on the affordable housing groups like Mercy Housing or whoever it was that we spoke to, and that we could look at prior to the Planning Commission meeting. So, and if you find that we need another meeting, you'll let us know, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay. All right, thanks for everybody's participation. I think this was a good meeting, a lot of information. And again, make sure you send in any comments or questions you have, and let me know if they get answered.
Yeah, almost done.
All right, so this meeting
All
will
right.
be adjourned at 5:09.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thanks all.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, it says update and set down, but nothing's happening. I would say that was what, about 11 times in like 2 hours?
I called AT&T.
That was awful.
I know.